That's just to say that my excitement level matches your excitement level. And the cow it's everywhere. I want to start with my one good Omaha story. This is not my first time in Omaha. I think this is my third time in Omaha. One of my absolute favorite people in the world lives here, a guy named Chris Hewitt. He's a guy who's on our board of directors. He has a fan in the front row. Just an incredible guy who I hope some of you know. And so my first time here, Chris was hosting me, and we were at lunch, I think close to here, because we're in the old village, old market. What is it called? I was supposed to nail this. The old market are we in the old market? Okay, so I'm remembering the geography. So we were somewhere near here at lunch, and I'm excited to connect with Chris and his wife. And Chris gets a text, and he reads it out loud, and he says, he's reading it from his friend. He says, at the Dell, this is how I interpreted how I heard the text. At the Dell and Bonner, Bonner, we'll say, at the Dell and Bonner, period, just walked in. And so he puts his phone down, no one cares, no one says anything. And then his friend who sent the text walks in like 45 minutes later and says, hey man, we were just at the Dell and Bono is there. And this is the part where I tell you Bono is my favorite person. Which is not that unique. But Bono is the one guy that I just nerd out on. So I naturally just stand up and leave because we are now going to the Dell. And so Chris says, okay, I guess we're going there. And I write Bono a note in the car on the way there because I don't want to interrupt, but I need to like communicate the meaning of the whole thing. So I'm in the back writing a note, and they're driving quickly across town. And we get there, and then you have to play it cool, We're walking into the Dell, and I think, okay, I'm playing it cool. And so I just kind of do this, and the hostess goes, oh, you missed him by 60 seconds. And so that's my story. That's it. That's my Omaha story of when I almost met Bono, and there's a note somewhere. That's all I got. There's not like a brilliant metaphor that ties into the rest of it. That's just, I really love you too, and I'm back here. But I'm honored to be here, and my friend Chris and his wife Felina are here as well. And I just wanted to share a little bit of my story, and then it's super cool that there'll be a couple of minutes for questions if you guys have questions. This is a very different setting for me. I get a lot of opportunities to speak, especially on college campuses. We've done a lot in the realm of music, places like the Warped Tour, a lot of different music festivals, even tours that we've gotten to be a part of. And I have so much respect for what you guys are about, for what so many of you are pursuing. Prior to this, I was a sales rep for the brand Hurley, and that was honestly the kind of job that I grew up dreaming about. They hired me when I was 22 years old, which still blows my mind. They made me their sales rep for the state of Florida. They said, we don't want to interview anyone else. You'll make at least $100,000 this year. Does this sound okay? And I tried to play it cool again. And so for the next 4 years, I was Hurley's rep for the state of Florida, and it was this sexy job. My friends thought it was the coolest thing. I was living in a house full of guys. I could pay rent for all of us. They all had free Hurley clothes, so it was a good time for them. And along the way, I started to wrestle with part of it just kind of feeling empty and wondering if maybe I was made for other things. And I was growing up and kind of figuring out who I was and what I wanted to be about. And part of the job just kind of felt hollow, and part of it felt lonely. And I just wondered if there was other things that I cared about, things that were creative, things that related to music. Even I noticed within Hurley that I was more interested in the marketing and the story and the advertising and the art, that side of things, more so than the sales. And I grew up with parents that just love people in an extraordinary way and had such a gift for being aware of the needs around them and doing their best to step in and meet those needs. And I had dropped out of college and honestly felt like there wasn't a plan B, like there wasn't this thing to fall back on. And I just wondered if I was going to have to make the best of this career. And certainly it was a great spot that I was in. But I wondered if, okay, this is going to have to be my life. I'm going to have to figure out how to be a sales guy and kind of make this work. And it was in 2006 that I was introduced to a girl named Renee, who became my friend and is still my friend today. And when I met Renee, she was struggling with drug addiction, with depression, with a history of self-injury. We would later learn that there had been suicide attempts. And she was denied entry into a local treatment center in Orlando. And I ended up spending the next 5 days with her and ended up writing a story about our time together and just a little bit about her life. And it wasn't very long. I wrote 2.5 pages, and I kept coming back to this phrase that I had written in the story. And the phrase was to write love on her arms. And really that was a goal. And a little bit about that title. The night I met Renee, after I met her, she went back upstairs to a group of people that said a lot of things that were different than what we were saying. We were encouraging her to get help, to come away from kind of this life and this season of life, and we wanted to see her go to treatment. She went back upstairs to a group that she had been partying with, and they said very, very different things. She ended up taking a razor blade to her arm, and with that blade across her left forearm, she wrote the word "fuck up." And I tell this story a lot. I've told it in churches. I've told it in high schools. I've said that word in some places where it's not often said. I've probably said that word in places where it's not allowed to be said. And the reason I think it's significant, the reason I continue to go back there is I think that was not about profanity. I think instead that was about identity. And I think if you were to ask her about that word and that moment and just to say, why would you do that? What did that mean? You would hear her say that just summed up what she believed about her life and how stuck she felt, the sense of regret, the sense of failure. And I think she was just saying, this is me. This is what my life has amounted to so far. And as I said, I wrote this story. I kept coming back to this sort of curious phrase that became the title. 2006, as a lot of you will remember, was kind of the moment of MySpace. I tell this story at colleges, and I feel old and it's awkward, but I feel like this is a safe place where maybe you remember. And honestly, it was just the perfect moment in time where I didn't know much about it, but I knew it was free to sign up. And so I made a page. I posted this story as a blog, and very quickly we had the idea to print and sell some T-shirts as a way to try to pay for her treatment. We realized that there was bills that were going to start to show up. Her family didn't have money. She didn't have any money. T-shirts were kind of all I knew. As a Hurley guy, Quicksilver before that, I grew up, wearing T-shirts, rocket science stuff coming at you. T-shirts, I just thought this is a way that I can help. And so we made the T-shirts available, and essentially what happened was both of these things went viral and took on a life of their own. A lot of that had to do with the support of friends in a couple different bands. Switchfoot was one of those bands. Amber Lynn was another. And these T-shirts ended up on stages in front of people, and people just began to hear about this. They even just began to recognize this curious phrase. And I think accidentally what happened was it just invited people to figure that out. And it invited other people to explain what the words meant. Why are you wearing that shirt? And what I love is it wasn't that people got to tell our story, but maybe in that moment they got to tell their story. And they got to talk about why it was personal to them, whether it was their struggle, whether it was the struggle of someone they cared for, someone they had lost. The T-shirts started to make their way around the world. These messages started to come in from around the world. And we started to hear from people struggling with addiction, people that were struggling with depression, whether they used that word or not. People who said, hey, it's really hard to get out of bed in the morning. It's really tough to fall asleep at night. My mom keeps saying that I don't smile like I used to, and she's always asking if I'm okay. We heard from people who just wrote in and they said, hey, there's someone I love and I'm afraid I'm going to lose them. I want to help, but I don't know how. There's someone I'm trying to help, but I feel like they're pushing me away. Do you have any advice? And basically overnight, my life changed, and it kind of set me on this new journey that's been the last 9 years of trying to learn about these issues, trying to learn and coming to realize that there's so many people in so many places that have devoted their lives, their careers to being a part of the solution to these problems. of helping other people become unstuck, become unhaunted, helping other people walk through the hardest parts of their story. And so now I get to stand up here on behalf of people who are sitting with a counselor for the first time. And maybe they're talking about things they didn't know if they ever could. And what maybe started out as a really scary phone call, a really scary first appointment, somehow got rewired to feel like maybe the most important hour of their week. And so I hear from people who say, hey, I'm sitting with someone now. I'm starting to be honest about some things I didn't know if I ever could. And as a result, there's a sense of progress. There's a sense of healing. Not that it's easy, but that it's worth it. And I hear from people who have stepped into treatment. Sometimes we meet people at the end of the night and they put a hand up, and had a guy say, hey, I'm 92 days sober. I just got out of treatment. It's not easy. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be one day at a time. But what I figured out is my life was out of control, and I cannot figure this out on my own. And so I need to be honest, and I'm going to need to pursue this recovery in the context of other people. And so we get to meet these people who are walking this difficult journey, but people who say, hey, but I've come to believe that this is worth it. Meet people who have struggled with self-injury. It would be the least understood of the issues that show up in our mission statement. People who use pain as a way of coping with their pain. And for a lot of us, that might be hard to even begin to get your head around. It's often met with a lot of ignorance, a lot of ugly words that are thrown in the direction of these folks. People say things like, hey, there's enough problems on this planet. There's enough real problems. You're just doing that for attention. That's not real. And as a result, I think there's a ton of shame. There's a ton of, again, ignorance that these people have to walk with. And yet I get to meet people who are getting help. People who wake up and say, hey, there must be a better way to live. I think I deserve better than to keep coming back to this place that's not really working. It's hurting me. It's hurting the people that I love. And so I get to meet people who are sitting with a therapist and beginning to get to the bottom of it, beginning to talk through, hey, why do I do this? How did I get here? Meet people who in a desperate moment have picked up the phone and called a crisis hotline, or they've called a suicide hotline. And in that moment, they chose to stay alive. And something that has kind of become fascinating to me is it wasn't oftentimes just about that moment, but it's a choice. It's actually two choices that they have to keep making. And people say, hey, I can't be alone with this pain, and I want to live. I want to keep going. And so they keep coming back to making these two choices. To say, I'm not going to be alone under the weight of this pain, under the weight of this sorrow. And I want to live. Maybe we get one shot at this life. Maybe these lives are not just our own. Maybe we belong also to the people who love us, the people who care about us. And so for them and for me, I want to do this. I want to give this my best shot, and I want to stay alive. And so everywhere I go, even right now, I get to stand up here on behalf of these people, of these kinds of stories that suggest that it's possible to change. We've learned a lot. We've heard from people in 100 different countries. We've learned that these are global issues, that this is a global conversation, basically about this invisible sort of pain that so often starts as a secret and it stays a secret. We've learned that there's 20 million of us here in America who struggle with depression, that untreated depression is the leading cause of suicide, that for us in this room today, suicide would be the third leading cause of death. And I think the one that maybe shocked me the most and has really stayed with me over the years was the statistic that said that 2 out of 3 people who struggle with depression, they never get help for it. And so if you sit with that for a second, that suggests that the majority of people who live in this place, who live in this painful place, they essentially live alone. And I think it points to the stigma, it points to the shame, it points to the confusion that kind of hovers over this conversation and just keeps it from happening. And it's interesting, we're comfortable talking about so many things in life. We're comfortable talking even about parts of our body, ways that we get sick, ways that things break. But when it comes to something like mental health, for some reason, we're not sure if we're allowed to go there. I think we're afraid of being misunderstood. I think we're afraid of the judgment we might be met with, the response that we might be met with, or maybe the response that we have been met with when we were honest about some things we weren't sure about or some things that we wished were different. It's hard to go back to trusting people when we've been failed in the past, when we've been hurt. We opened up and it didn't feel very good. And so it's hard to go back there and to believe that things can be different. We've come to believe in that professional help piece. We've been able to give more than $1.5 million that's gone to treatment, that's gone to counseling, that's gone to this kind of work in America and around the world. And there's another idea that I think we get equally excited about. And maybe it has a simple word as a place to start, but I think it's this word community. And maybe that last bit, maybe not all of that applies to you. Maybe you feel like, hey, I'm doing okay. You know, I've been to counseling. That's not something I need right now. I'm not struggling with addiction. But I think this other word, this second word, I think is something that applies to all of us. No matter how busy you are, no matter introvert, extrovert, family or not, no matter what you're working on, we have all the excuses in the world, but I think we all deserve a community. I think we all deserve a support system. And you can use the phrasing or the wording that you're comfortable with, but maybe we find ourselves on this planet and we are made or we're wired or somehow we end up here and we're not supposed to be alone. Sometimes we are, but in general, we're not supposed to walk this journey on our own. That we're actually made to be loved and to be known and to participate in relationships and friendships where that can actually be exchanged and reciprocated. So I'm supposed to know some people and love some people, and I'm supposed to let them know me and love me. And I'm starting to believe more and more that when you think about what is the point of this life, and even in a room like this, what does success look like? What is a successful life? What is a successful life? What is a successful career? What's a good story? What's a story that's interesting? What's a story that's worth following? I'm starting to believe more and more that it's about that last piece. It's about the other characters in our story and the idea that we get to do life with people and we get to celebrate each other's victories together. We get to mourn together. We get to walk through the really hard stuff together. That we all need this support system. And I think the way people talk about counseling, the same words apply when you think about community. It can be a very scary thing to start to have an honest conversation or to participate in honest relationships and to really camp out around the question, how are you? Right? It's this question that we all basically ignore. Like when you unpack it for a second, it's very awkward that we're this people that answer how are you with how are you, right? That's super weird when you think about it. And yet I get to meet people who are taking it to this other extreme and saying, hey, that's a really important question. It might be the most important question. And so we're going to devote some time and we're going to sit with that. Maybe it's 2 of us, maybe it's 5 of us. And we're going to be intentional about saying, hey, the answers to that question matter. And so we just get to know people who are going there. And they're answering the question, how are you doing? What do you wish was different? What's the stuff that hurts? And it's people who are actually going beyond the status updates and the pictures and kind of the life that we construct and we're all very good at figuring out what we want people to see and kind of the trophies that we hold up throughout the day. But I wonder, what does it look like to let some people in beyond that? And I no longer believe that it has anything to do with followers or Facebook friends or the amount of numbers in your phone. I think you can be very impressive. I can be very impressive in those places. But it doesn't mean that anybody actually knows me. And so I wonder, do you have a few people who you can be real with? Do you have a few people who you're not trying to impress. But you can be honest with them, and they are invited to be honest with you, and you guys walk through this thing together. And you lean on each other, and we're figuring this thing out together. I've come to believe I'm not an expert in storytelling or anything like that. Certainly there's so much talk, maybe even too much talk these days of storytelling, and come learn the 4 ways and how to make more money and story, everything. But I have come to believe that a good story seems to be about more than one character. And again, you guys are my age, so I can be comfortable. The exception that I'm aware of is the movie Castaway, right? It's basically him, Tom, on an island growing a beard. But even the asterisk there is Wilson, who is the volleyball, who we think of as a person, right? You grow to love Wilson. But joking aside, think about the last movie that you loved. Think about the last book that you loved. Stories that you've come to cherish, or even the memories in your life. My guess is it's not just a story about one person, but it's probably a group of people who care about each other, who are invested in each other's lives, and they're figuring something out together. They're overcoming something, maybe a lot of somethings together. And so it implies to me that a good story is going to require a few characters. Probably not 500, probably not 200, but I wonder if there's a few people that are going with you, wherever you're headed, whatever you're in the middle of, whatever you're walking through, people that you get to lean on, people who get to lean on you. And my hunch is we're a people kind of fascinated with answers. Even the stage and the lights, it kind of implies that there will be people standing up here, and they have come to figure out some answers, and we're all going to take notes, and we just love answers, right? We love success and figuring out the next thing. But I wonder, what does it look like to say that the questions really matter? And that in this life, we bump into some really heavy questions, some really difficult questions. Maybe you relate to that personally, or maybe you relate because it's your family back home, or it's your brother, or it's your cousin, or it's a classmate that you lost. But there's some really big questions that we bump into just in being alive in this life. And maybe you can say it's part of this human condition that we keep waking up to. That we will all experience pain, that we will all lose things in this life. We will have to lose people, we will have to lose relationships, we come to the end of things. And I don't know about you, but for me, the older I get, the further I get down this road, the harder it is to live in the present with the hope of the future, because it's more and more tempting to try to go back. It's more and more tempting to feel stuck in moments, that's a Bono reference, and to just keep trying to press rewind, right? And to say, I wish I had said that, I wish I had done that, maybe I can fix that, maybe I can control that. And I wonder if you get to live a life where there's space for your questions. There's space for your pain. There's people who meet you in those places. I hope that there is. I want to leave some time for any questions, so I want to close just something else in the realm of stories and maybe storytelling. Everything that I get to do now as a career is the result of a story that went viral in 2006. This To Write Love on Our Arms thing that I get to work on, it started about as small as something could, with trying to help one person and trying to tell one story, and maybe believing that we could shape where that story went and how it played out. And so certainly we've been fascinated to watch a story to some degree make its way around the world. And we've just fascinated by how stories matter to people, and why is that, and which ones do, and all of that. And what I want to share is a little bit of a disclaimer, which is that I'm not up here to try to impress you with the story of To Write Love on Our Arms, not up here to try to impress you with my story. Do hope you like the Bono story. It wasn't that good. But the hope everywhere we go, the hope right now is to kind of press pause and sort of trade places and just say, hey, everybody in this room is living a story. Your story matters as much as mine. It matters as much as anybody that's going to stand on this stage. And if you're comfortable with that metaphor, my guess is you don't live there all day, every day, right? You don't wake up and rub your eyes, your feet hit the ground, and you say, I shall continue my story today, right? That would be sort of epic. It would be like Lord of the Rings, and it might actually be really cool. But if you're comfortable for a second with that story metaphor, my hunch is we all have parts of our story that we don't like. And we all have parts of our story that we wish were different. We have the stuff that haunts us. We have the stuff we don't really know how to let go of. We don't know if we can talk about it or not. We don't know the response we might be met with. We've maybe heard of counseling, but we don't know if we could actually do that. And somehow within the same stories, there's stuff that you love. There's stuff that makes you laugh, makes you smile, makes you light up and feel alive. Friendships, memories, trips you got to take, your favorite concert. Hopefully the love story that you get to be a part of or that you dream of being a part of in a room full of young people. Hopefully it's the hope of what's ahead, of how things might play out. Maybe it's as simple as your favorite book, your favorite song, the best concert you've ever been to. Some things that remind us that we're alive. In a room like this, I would think too, there's a lot of fear. We're afraid to fail. We got some big ideas. We're not sure how it's going to go. And those tend to be connected to our dreams, right? To the things we want to run after, the things we want to create, the things that we can see that maybe not everyone else around us can see. And what I want to suggest is just that all of it matters. That all of that stuff inside your story matters. The hardest parts of it, your favorite parts of it, the stuff that makes you light up, the stuff that makes you, the things that are all about the future, the hope and the dreams and the possibilities. And my hope is that you don't take my word for it. My hope is that as you walk out of here today, or maybe you're even sitting by some of these people now, that there's people in your life who remind you that your story matters, who remind you that your story is worth fighting for, and not just in a way that is said out loud, but people who would step up and play those parts. People who, as you feel exhausted or you feel hurt, when you feel burnt out, people that will step in and fight for your story, that will fight for your life. The hope is certainly that you would maybe believe that your story is sacred, is priceless, is unique, that you matter to so many other people. I have a friend who's a poet. She says that your voice is someone's favorite voice. Your face is someone's favorite face. And I hope you get to sit with that. Think about those other people. And think about the idea that this world, not just in some abstract way, but specifically this world, people here need you, need your friendship, need your support, need your love. I hope you have a support system. I hope you believe that you deserve that. I hope you know that you don't have to fake it, that you're not just here to compete, you're not just here to perform, that it's okay to press pause, it's okay to rest. If you need help, it's okay to say that you need help. And I'm going to leave it there. I want to thank you guys for listening. The always standing O is tricky because you don't actually know if you did a good job. Because it's like, you're probably going to get one, you know? I'm going to drink the box water. Wait, you guys just stand up when people drink box water? Okay, hey man.
Hi, Jamie. Wow.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much. So, my question is long-winded, so give me a moment.
I was just long-winded myself, so it's okay.
It's good. So I'm a life and career coach for 20-somethings, so I'm fascinated by this kind of worldwide problem of depression and self-harm, especially given that I've struggled with it in my past when I was in high school. And to me, just as I'm listening to you speak, it seems like it's a downstream symptom of an upstream problem, like large scale. And if you agree with that, what do you think those upstream problems are?
Yeah, man, I definitely think that I agree with you. You know, there's a lot of talk about suicide prevention and so much focus on the moment, kind of that final moment, and how do we save someone, how do we prevent this, and I've come to believe that so much of the solution is upstream, and I think some of it I just touched on, where I think it's about us participating in honest relationships. It's about us having people who know us so that those people can say, hey, you seem off, you seem down, because they know us and they're bought in to be able to see that and to ask those questions. I think it's as a people believing that it is okay to get help. You know, we take our car in when it needs service. If we break our arm, we don't try to fake it, right? We don't try to play it off. And so what if we approached mental health the same way and just said, hey, if you need help, that's perfectly okay. So I think in terms of how, you know, the symptoms, I think oftentimes we can be good at faking it, but I think that's where it comes back to really needing people who know us, because it's very hard to fake it with people who we are consistent with. You know, they're going to see our behavior change. There's just something about being known. So I think there's a lot to it, but I think it's a conversation that is very, very hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hey, Jamie, my name's Andrew. I'm back here, sorry.
Hey.
First of all, I want to thank you for just all the work that you've done. You've actually provided a catalyst to a family member of myself to start a conversation about her self-harm, and so first of all, thank you for that. My question is, you guys have been able to successfully, at least from what I can tell, transcend faith barriers, transcend cultural barriers to provide a platform to talk about this issue. And I'm wondering if you could touch on some of maybe the key points or key point that you found to be successful in being able to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, man. We're running out of time, but a couple of things that come to mind. It's funny, you know, I worked for Hurley previously. I worked for Quicksilver before that. So I grew up kind of in love with these brands, specifically in the surfing world. And that also gave me permission to believe that we could create something that could stick around, because this thing came out of nowhere. There was this element of, hey, this is a trend. This thing just took off and it's here, and can it last 6 months? And I think my background helped me believe that we could build something that could last 10 years and hopefully 10 years after that. And I think oftentimes I think it's changing, but so often in the nonprofit world, people don't think about things like language. They don't think about things like design. And you almost wonder, are those things shallow? And I'm excited to, I think, be a part of sort of a new wave of people that say, hey, that stuff is significant. It matters. I mean, I remember joking, if we're going to make one T-shirt to raise money, we should make a really cool T-shirt that people want to wear. And that's incredibly basic. But we think so much about how things look and feel and sound. And then more than anything, I think it comes back to the need, that there's such a need for the conversation that I get to be a part of, that at the end of the day, it's not about programs and marketing and all the, different sort of branding words. That stuff is important, but at the end of the day, I think we're trying to bring some really important, good ideas to people who need them. And I think this is stuff that so many people in every room I ever go to relate to, whether it's their struggle, whether it's the struggle of people they care about. And so there's such a need there. And I think we just want to continue to be creative, continue to be bold and honest in how we invite people into the conversation. But I think there's such a need that's what I think more than anything else allows us to keep going. And it's something I'm really thankful for. And I have now gone over, but I'm happy to be here. So thank you guys so much. I'm gonna stick around. I'm happy to be here with you today, and would love to say hello to some of you later. So thank you again.